My name's Jules Mitchell. I call home Hermosa Beach, California. Yoga found me probably sometime before this lifetime. I always knew what yoga was. I never remembered learning about yoga. I just knew what it was. I knew what it was when I was 5 years old. My mom had some funny book from the 70s in a leotard, and I'd look at the pictures and do the poses. So I was practicing yoga before I really even knew it was yoga. I just knew what it was. It was very familiar. And then I forgot about it because I was a teenager. Life got in the way. And when I went to college, I picked a friend and said, let's start taking yoga classes. And started taking yoga. At the time, it was actually a very famous studio in Tucson, Arizona. I had no idea it was a famous studio, but I feel very fortunate to have started practicing there. And I walked in. The first pose that we did was legs up the wall for like 20 minutes in the beginning of class. And I giggled my whole way through it because I couldn't be with myself. Like, the teenage years had taken away all the yoga I did when I was 5. And it was a really profound experience. Like, it wasn't uncomfortable. I just was witnessing myself not knowing who I was. And so I was sold. I was like, I'm in. And I practiced yoga regularly for maybe 10 years, well, a little less than 10 years, probably like 8 years, something like that. But it wasn't very dedicated. I was just, my work nights and my schedule wasn't great. I would go regularly and consistently, but sometimes it'd be once a week, sometimes it'd be once a month, sometimes it'd be 5 times a week. So it wasn't like an everyday thing in my life. And then in 2003, after my mom passed away, it was like, that was it. That sealed the deal. It was the only place I could go to cry. So I'd work it all out on the mat and then lay in Shavasana and like just be with mom. And so I started teaching like right after that. I just like got ingrained into the studio, and one day I needed a sub and I was there and became a teacher. Kind of went really easily. So it's just always been a part of my life. It just kind of unfolded in its own way. And I just find it interesting because I'm a yoga teacher and I practice yoga, but it's evolved so much over the years. I don't even recognize what I do sometimes, but it's still yoga. It's my yoga. I come from a very educated family, so my curiosity for science I didn't have a choice. It was just built into me from day one. Obviously, I chose that. I mean, chose my parents, and that's what I wanted. My father was an engineer, and my mother taught at UCLA. She was a professor at UCLA. So it was like this really cool blend between the math, science, physics role model that was my father, and then the research, campus libraries, writing long papers that I got from my mom. And so I've been in school my entire life. Like, I'm 40 years old, and I can't think of one year that I wasn't taking a course at a university, either as an elective or for fun or for personal growth or development. And it really is just in the last 10 years that everything's really become focused on the body. But I studied civil engineering for quite a while, and it took quite a while for me to transition and realize that actually applied to the body as well. And even when I applied to the graduate program in exercise science and my focus was biomechanics, I was a little concerned because I didn't have as much like organic chemistry and some of the harder biology courses that they wanted you to have, they didn't need. And they looked at me and they were like, no, don't even bother. You know physics. Nobody knows physics. This is going to be great. You're going to do wonderful. And I did. I just ate it up. So it just was part of me. I never chose to be interested in it. So in the academic environment, there is a lot of argument and defending one's position. So it's not really argumentative. It's more a elevated discussion of highly informed people. And conversations that I may have thought before were confrontational are now very nourishing conversations. And that it's really the avidya that is what makes us feel argumentative. Even like when you research some of these articles and you're looking in the journals, one of my favorite things to read is the editorial section in the front where people can like write in and give comments that aren't actually research-based, but they're thoughts on something that came up in the last journal. And you'll see like the same 4 scientists, like issue after issue, going round and round, arguing their hypothesis, pointing out downfalls in somebody's study. And it's, again, they're friends. You'll see them at a cocktail party drinking wine together. But this is how they engage, because they're not threatened. They see the big picture and they know exactly what they don't know. And so I think that translates for me really well into yoga, because I'm not trying to defend a position. I've taken all this information, I'm trying to share it. I just want to get it out there. I wish that I had found it earlier. And I feel like there's a good response. Occasionally I'll get some people that might interpret it as I'm trying to push my thesis or push my position. And it's really themselves showing up. Their position is not ready to hear my ideas. They're just ideas. Mentors come and go, and I don't mean that as a way of devaluing. Mentors show up when you need them, and they go on their way when you don't need them. And that's this beautiful aspect of the constantly changing world. And I think yoga embraces that very much so. And we have many amazing leaders in our yoga community that know so much, and I admire them greatly. And they lead sort of this shift. It's constantly evolving and changing. And by the work that they have given us and that the foundations they have set for us, it gave me a place to work off of. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have the questions that I had. And I only have my little bubble to measure it off of. I'm sure there's other opinions, but the communication that I get from the public is like screams curiosity. And it's not a if this person said that, it has to be true. It's really, I'm hearing, this person said that, this person says this. How am I as a teacher going to reconcile those two things? And that's this heightened awareness that comes from practicing yoga, I believe, that we are open to not being attached to one answer. I'll start with Leeann Carey. She taught me everything I know about what to do with the yoga prop. And she didn't just teach me how to use the yoga prop. She taught me how to look at it and see it for what it is, and to figure out how to use it for any particular individual at any moment in time. So I don't see a block as, like you'll hear a lot of times in the community, yoga block brings the floor to you. Like that's like one of a million things it can do. So I honor her for that. I'll have to say I'm going to thank my thesis advisor, Dr. Crussemeyer, for doing actually very little. She pushed me. She didn't guide me. Her way of guiding me was to force me to guide myself. And it was sneaky. I kept wanting answers from her. I kept wanting her to tell me things, and she just made me push forward. And I thank her for that. I don't know that I would have finished my thesis if I had somebody trying to guide me. It was really a self-motivated, driven project. It was way too big. And then I'm going to thank Gil Hedley. Gil Hedley is my poet and my truth speaker. When I go study with him, it's just about his talks. He's my mentor when it comes to Dharma talks and speaking truths that aren't textbook, truths that are just rights of being alive. And then like every scientist that is referenced in my thesis. I'm not going to name them all here, but all of them. Because they're the ones that spend the hours in the lab, which is probably way more work than sitting in my Hermosa Beach home office, looking at the sunset, browsing the library on the computer. So I thank them for all their hard work. My plans with my thesis now are to turn it into a book, but a book that is really geared toward yoga teachers. A book about biomechanics for yoga teachers. And it'll be a ton of work because my thesis is just a really rich science paper. It doesn't read like an enjoyable book. It's very rich, really dense sentences. So I'll have to rewrite it and also add tons of photos and tons of applications. And so it's going to be a project, but I think we need it. So that's my next goal. If I were to leave you with one thought, one idea that will help you carry yoga through the rest of your life, that would be to continue your education, to always question and learn. If you're a student, go to workshops, find teachers that are available to talk to. If you're a teacher, find mentors that are available. People that you can have dialogue with, create communities, and like real life communities, not necessarily Facebook communities. Those are good too, but real conversations where tone of voice can be heard, questions can be asked, and interaction is live and in the present moment. Things aren't misunderstood. And read every book you can get your hands on, especially ones that contradict each other.